It's Pavlovian, isn't it? So we have a song to start with. We sing of golden mornings, which it certainly is out there. Thank goodness it's cooled off a little bit. If you want to rise, stay where you are, whatever you would like to do, let's sing this first song together. We sing of golden mornings. Be seated. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Ken Boysworth. I'm a member of your Board of Trustees. We would like to welcome everyone this morning to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Venice, or as we affectionately call it, UCOV. We are a welcoming congregation, no matter your color, your creed, your race, your ability, your class, no matter how you love, your expression, political affiliation, or age. We have no dogma or creed. We have our shared 7 principles, perhaps the first being the most significant, that being the respect and inherent dignity and worth of all people. If you would like to know more about this congregation and its many opportunities for learning, growth, and connection, you can check out our webpage at UCOV, that's uucov.org. We hope you will find something in this service that speaks to you and maybe lifts your spirit and allows some personal growth. We're glad that you've chosen to worship with us here today. Do we have any first-time visitors or some of our seasonal members returning? We promise not to intimidate you, just want to stand up and recognize you. Can you tell us who you are? First name's fine, where you're from. Welcome to the warm spot. It looks just cold this morning. Yes.
Ted Pearson, I was here last week from Maine.
Welcome.
Yep, my first in Venice. And Ted helped Greg Mulch on Saturday.
Kim,
Kim McHugh returned Tuesday from Rhode Island.
welcome back. Bill? Oh. Al Schaefer, you have a little gratitude you'd like to offer?
Good morning. just want to thank all the men, women, and children who helped yesterday to make our Mulch Fest a success. I know I missed thanking some of you personally, but know you were appreciated. I especially want to thank Steve and Eileen Leapley for their help in directing the volunteers and making sure the event was put on In Touch. Thanks to Tom Voigt for cleaning all the mold off the signs and posts. To Reverend Khleber and Linda Van Zandt for raking the memorial garden. Been meaning to get that done for about a year and a half. To Nancy Ryder, Linda Underwood, and Pam Palmer for providing drinks and refreshments, which were appreciated by all that participated. And I especially want to thank the crew who were here Friday to distribute the bags so they could be spread. Brad Harden brought his trailer, which was a huge help. Steve and Eileen Leapley, Jack Head, newcomer Ted Pearson, and my wife Donna. You all made short work of a heavy task. Thanks again.
We have quite a few announcements to get through, but each month we take up a special offering for a social justice or a social action cause in our local community. This month's is Family Promise. Family Promise assists families with children without housing. And when we donate, those funds go for a hand up, not a handout. We have resumed, your Board of Trustees about 2 years ago initiated the return of the passing of the baskets for those who have indicated there's a little confusion. So when the basket pass, please be generous. Beginning next week, the coffee ministry will resume service after they finish stocking and cleaning. And this evening, Tom, did you want to speak to that?
Good morning. Sorry my wife Pat couldn't be here to present this to you, but the South County Jazz with Maury will be back this year after the COVID is passing us. Normally it will be on Friday afternoons. I don't have the schedule with me right now, but the first one is this afternoon at 2 o'clock, between 2 and 4. You may remember all of the jazz concerts that we've had here in the past. Well, this one will be the same, only this one is going to be with Diego Figueroa. He is a jazz guitarist, and apparently he's very well known around the world. He's made many CDs. He's gotten praise from a lot of people. I have this. I will leave this out back for you to take a look at if you want. It's $25 per person, starting at 2 o'clock this afternoon. We hope if you like jazz at all, come on over here in the sanctuary. Thank you.
Pam, would you please come up and address the congregation about our search for an interim minister and a settled minister? It's a little lengthy, but it's very significant.
As a member and currently president of the Board of Trustees, we know that this is a very unsettling time. It's a long process, and there'll be many steps, and many of you are wondering what some of those steps are. So what I'd like to tell you is that the first step we are taking in informing the congregation is there will be a special presentation after service on December 5th concerning the process of acquiring an interim minister and then our new settled minister. We want to make sure that this process is as open and transparent as possible. So please come hear more about it from your Board of Trustees after church on December 5th here in the sanctuary. To that extent, we are planning to hold monthly congregational meetings starting on Sunday, December 5th, with grab a coffee and tea, and then return to the sanctuary where we'll start this process of probably a lot of questions and answers and some letting you know exactly at what position we are at the moment. The monthly meeting will start out on Sundays and we're limited to no more than 45 minutes. If we take a 20-minute pause after the service, then start back up at 11:20 or so, we should be back out the latest by noon. So those of you who go to lunch still will be able to go to lunch. At this time frame doesn't work, we will try to decide together how best to keep everyone informed and involved. We want to be as transparent as possible and keep you as current as possible with the process. Keep in mind that we are following UUA guidelines, and if you want to have firsthand knowledge about the entire process, which is expected to take about 2 years, there's a website you can address, and I will have a copy of this out on the welcome table after service. I also have 2 more copies of the book in interim if anyone is interested in reading it. It's a review of the process of getting an interim minister. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. To that end, I would like to recognize and let you know of our fellow congregants. We have a group that are really putting a lot of work and effort in. Dave Williams, will you stand up? Janet Knudsen, will you, okay? And Jackhead. Okay? These 3 people are conducting the search. A lot of work. Okay? Now, our settled minister, Khleber Van Zandt, will begin the service. We can have a good time.
So those 3 people, I understand, are searching for an interim, correct? Not the search for the settled minister. Is that correct?
We're actually looking for spring of next year, followed by an interim, then a settlement.
Okay, but I guess my point was the search committee has not been formed for the settled minister.
This is only for right now we're only looking at next spring.
Right, okay, good. Which is why we all need to come to December 5th. There's an awful lot going on here. Venice Interfaith Community Association is an interfaith organization that this congregation has been with since its beginning. Our minister, Reverend Nazian, helped begin that VICA. And VICA has been doing an interfaith Thanksgiving service for many years. This year, on the Wednesday evening before Thanksgiving Day, that is Wednesday, November 24th, at 7 p.m., that service will come up online. Once again, it could not be put together live because of COVID, but it will be online. We will find a way to get you the ways to join that service Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Phil wanted me to mention Adult RE after church today is over in Waters Hall. I also know that these flowers were brought in by Dale Povenmire in honor of Marilyn Povenmire's birthday today. On a very sad note, Steve Doublestein's husband, John Moeller, died this week. John has been dealing with cancer for some time and entered hospice this week and has died. Steve could use our energy and some cards and letters, I believe. The prelude begins our worship. Our call to worship comes from the 19th and 20th century Indian mystic Rabindranath Tagore. Let me not pray to be sheltered from dangers, but to be fearless in facing them. Let me not beg for the stilling of my pain, but for the heart to conquer it. Let me not look for allies in life's battlefield, but to my own strength. Let me not crave in anxious fear to be saved, but hope for the patience to win freedom. Grant me that I may not be a coward, feeling your mercy in my success alone, but let me find the grasp of your hand in my failure. Let us worship together. Our hymn will be number 203, All Creatures of the Earth and Sky. I invite you to rise up as you're willing and able. All creatures of the earth and sky, come and lift your voices high. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Bright burning sun with golden beam, soft shining moon with silver gleam. Hallelujah, Swift rushing winds so wild and strong, like clouds that sailing down along. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Their rising morning praise rejoice. Thy stars of evening find a voice. Remain standing. We have a unison reading that will be led by our Director of Religious Education, Kathy Avery.
Good morning. Love is the doctrine of this church after L. Griswold Williams. Sorry. He was a little excited this morning.
I'm very excited.
Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sanctity, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to speak knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls may grow in harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other.
be seated. Thank you, Kathy. Kathy is here because there are others with the children online. Our kids have their own religious education class by Zoom each Sunday, still, but soon they will be back, each Sunday at 10. If you'd like to attend that class or help your child to attend, login information can be found on the website at uucov.org or on our Facebook page. Today, instead of a recorded story on the screens, I brought a reading from the book. It's entitled Ahab's Wife. It's by Sina Jeter Naslund. It offers a differently gendered perspective on the book Moby Dick by the Unitarian author Herman Melville. So the author is talking in the voice of her main character here. On the last morning of September, as I walked the beach, I came to a large fragment of a ship washed ashore. Rammed into the sand, the shattered prow could have come from the sky as likely as from the sea. Once I'd found on the shore a storm-driven blackbird, dead, with its ivory beak plowed into the sand. Though that bird had half rotted, one tattered wing was held up stiffly. Just so, this wrecked prow, twisted into the sand, still held up a sweep of hull like a wing. I paused, and I contemplated what was not the Pequod, which was the name of her husband Ahab's ship. Standing on the sand, I stared at the wooden wing, and the wreck stared back at me till we had each told our stories. And my restlessness dissolved. That night, as I climbed the stairs inside my home up to the roof walk, I thought fleetingly of its other name, the Widow's Walk. But when I emerged out onto the platform, the glittering road of the Milky Way stretched from one side of the night dome to the other. In such a swarm of light, I was not alone. Perhaps some other being on an unnamed planet looked out across the spangled void and imagined me. On my own planet, where was my friend Susan? Did she stand with eyes lifted, lips parted, also enjoying the riches of the Milky Way? I thought of its Japanese name, the Celestial River, and how all of us lived in the glory of its current. So ends the reading. If you've brought with you some celebration or other to church this morning, I'll bring you the microphone. And I'm told, I still think I probably ought to hold the microphone, but maybe cooties is too ancient a term. So the COVID-19 virus is still in the air, so I'll hold the microphone. Let's leave it at that. I'll hold the mic for the time being. If you've brought a celebration to church, I'll bring you the mic. And let us know your name.
Hi, I'm Linda Engel, and this past week, Wednesday, there was an article in the Gondolier about my dad for Veterans Day, and I actually learned a few things. And one thing, he was in the hurricane of 1937 that went through Rhode Island. 38, I'm close. He was 12, but that was in the story too, so anyway.
Good. Other celebrations. If you've brought any sorrows with you to church this morning, I'll bring you the mic. gratitude and celebrations among us this day become a blessing to us all. May the concerns and sorrows of each be carried in all our hearts, a burden shared become a load lightened. Now I'd invite you into a spirit of prayer and meditation as we begin with a poem from Rabindranath Tagore. I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted, and behold, service was joy. Faith is the bird that feels the light when the dawn is still dark. You can't cross the sea merely by standing and staring at the water. The butterfly counts not months, but moments, and has time enough. Clouds come floating into my life, no longer to carry rain or usher storm, but simply to add color to my sunset sky. Everything comes to us that belongs to us if we create the capacity to receive it. So let your life lightly dance on the edges of time, like dew on the tip of a leaf. Don't limit a child to your own learning, for she was born in another time. We lift up those in this community who face change, challenge, or loss this day, as we hold within our hearts all who suffer. And now we pray, each in our own ways, into the silence. The hopes of this community are offered forth in the names of all those who've gone before and in the names of all those who will come after, in the names of all the helpers of humankind. Shalom, salam, amen, and blessed be. Words are important to Unitarian Universalists. You can tell you're writing with a group of UUs when you begin to debate the meaning of each phrase, then the meaning of each word, and then the need or not for another comma. Then you start over because you realize you started out with an inherent bias. Myself, I still use the Oxford comma. I learned it when I was little. I can't do differently, apparently. But music is important too. You find music in worship at nearly any UU church you visit. And that UU music varies like everything else about our congregations. But apparently, UU congregational singing is similar enough across congregations that one can hear the same joke told across the spectrum. Why are hymns so quiet in a Unitarian Universalist church? It's because we're all reading ahead to see what words they're going to make us sing. So words and music are important, and recognizing that, I wanted to look today at one of the hymns that we sing occasionally here. It's one in my personal top 40 list, number 191, Now I Recall My Childhood. Yes, we will sing it as our last hymn today, but I hope we can walk through it together before we get to the end. Since you probably don't have a hymnal in your hand because we're doing this different thing, I will tell you that if you looked in the hymnal, you would see down below the hymn that the name of the tune down in the right corner is Sursum Corda. Sursum Corda. The Sursum Corda, which is Latin for lift up your hearts, is the name given to the opening dialogue of the communion prayer in the liturgies of the Christian church, small c, dating all the way back to the 3rd century of the Common Era. It's found almost universally in ancient forms of that sacrament. The few copies of things we have, they're in there. You may know it. In the Western Church, Roman Catholic one especially, the traditional dialogue of the Sursum Corda runs like this. The Lord be with you. With you. Lift up your hearts. We lift them up to the Lord, and so on. Now that may resonate with you, or it may not. But when we say those things together, we're connecting somehow with almost 2,000 years of human tradition. You can still hear that Sursum Corda spoken today in many kinds of Christian churches, Catholic, Episcopal, Lutheran, Methodist, among others. But Sursum Corda is also the name given to the tune written in 1941 by the Episcopalian composer Alfred Morton Smith that's used for this hymn. And it's used for a couple others, actually, in our hymnal. Now, the tune is certainly not unknown to us UUs. So here we are, singing a hymn tune with an ancient Christian name written by a 20th century Christian composer. And so we sing Christian words for this hymn, right? No, of course not. We're UUs. We've adopted the words of a 19th century Bengali mystic. Our lyrics come from Rabindranath Tagore, the Bengali poet, writer, and philosopher of the 13th into the 19th, the 19th into the 20th century, who wrote a lot of poetry and won the 1913 Nobel Prize in Literature. Also, an accomplished musician, Tagore wrote the music that would become the national anthems of India and Bangladesh. The only person to have written the national anthems for 2 different countries. Now, Tagore toured the U.S. in 1912. He spoke at the Unitarian Church of Urbana, Illinois. It's a couple of hundred miles up the road from where I served for 10 years in Alton, Illinois. He returned to tour in 1921 and spoke from the pulpit of the First Unitarian Church of Dallas, a pulpit I was privileged to speak from several times in that 100 years since Tagore was there. Tagore was reared in a non-Orthodox Hindu household. He learned religion from his parents. Religion was for him about the relationship of humanity with nature or God. It was a natural religion, the ultimate goal of which, for him, was the individual's absorption into God and nature. It is a poem from his 1918 work, Crossing, that has been adapted to this Sursum Corda tune. So I want to go through his words kind of closely for a bit and see what we find there. Could you give me a D? Now I recall my childhood when the sun burst to my bedside with the day's surprise. Faith in the marvelous bloomed anew each dawn, flowers bursting forth within my heart each day. It's the first verse. Now I recall means the narrator is looking back from the now into the past, back to his childhood, in fact. So recalling one's childhood is the first point of entry for us into the text of this poem and the text of the lyric. When the sun burst to my bedside with the day's surprise. And when you were young, did you ever wake up with the sun drenching your bedroom and wonder just what surprise that day had in store for you? You ever do that now? Faith in the marvelous bloomed anew each dawn. When you were little, did your sense of wonder reemerge every morning? Weren't you sure that something miraculous would happen that day? Flowers bursting fresh within my heart each day. I think it's striking, at least for me, that the flowers that Tagore is talking about here are not blooming out there. They're blooming within here. And each day tells us that experience is not once and gone, but it's ongoing, never ending. For Tagore, it's eternally new and exuberant. How many of us have successfully killed off that sense of exuberance in ourselves in favor of a feeling of stability and security, safety? Maybe worse, in favor of a feeling of pain and panic and paranoia. It would be easy these days. A D. I wouldn't have guessed. Then looking on the world with simple joy, on insects, birds, and beasts, and common weeds, the grass and clouds had fullest wealth of awe. My mother's voice gave meaning to the stars. Now, with simple joy, we're remembering here a time in the past when we were not yet jaded, but still willing and able to feel joy. And without complication, we felt all of that without our well-practiced cynicism. On insects, birds, and beasts, and common weeds. It includes all the natural world, not just the part we deem valuable, but also the weeds. The parts that if we got to be the deciders, we'd have pulled up and thrown away a long time ago. The grass and clouds had fullest wealth of all. Grass and clouds. The earth below and the sky above, all of which are objects of wonder, marvels of creation that we too often forget to approach with a sense of awe. My mother's voice gave meaning to the stars. The one who gave you life may not have, like mine didn't, told you that the sun was 9.296 times 10 to the 7th miles away from the earth, or that the closest star was Proxima Centauri at a distance of 4.3 light years. But maybe she did explain to you that the stars are there dancing in the sky even when we can't see them, and are so far away that we can dream and wish and plan all we want to and still never reach them in our lifetimes. My own mother showed me the constellations looking southward from her mother's, my grandmother's, front porch. I can still, in my mind's eye, see and feel those moments with her and my grandmother. I think that's why I'm still drawn to Orion the hunter's belt and sword whenever I look up at the sky on a clear winter evening in this hemisphere. I'll need a D again. So easy for you. Now when I think to turn of coming, let me start again. Now when I turn to think of coming death, I find life's song and star songs of the night, in rise of curtains and new morning light, in life reborn in fresh surprise of love. Now, in this eternal now, I do sometimes turn from thoughts of my present to thoughts of my inevitable passing. Not often, but sometimes. In the text, this indicates to me a shift from the simple joy of the previous lines to what? Fear? Sadness? Dread? Or is it, as I want to believe, simply a more mature and reflective joy? It's an open question, as I imagine it is for many of us. In the hymn, though, it resolves pretty quickly, because the next line is, I find life's song in star songs of the night. I hope it's true for us that we can still find, even in the face of certain death, the song of life in the music of the stars streaming down from the heavens overhead. And then in its final words, in life reborn in fresh surprise of love. The whole hymn and all of life resolves into love. So, a timeline. These lyrics are a poem set in the present, but they span an entire lifetime. The poet stands in the midst of life, aware of the present while looking back to the beginning and forward to the end, celebrating this eternal now while acknowledging both the past and the future. And all is music, all is marvelous, all is life. That's awe and surprise, newness and freshness. The stars above figure prominently in the narrative, not as a place called heaven that one can fly to after death, but as the stars that right now dwell above us all. The stars that light up the night sky, the stars that tell sailors their location, the stars that comfort the ones who wait for a sailor's return. In the reading a little bit earlier from the novel Ahab's Wife, author Sina Jeter Naslund is telling the story of Una Spencer, a woman in the mid-19th century who struggles with her faith, bouncing back and forth between Unitarianism and Universalism, between atheism and a reluctant acknowledgement that there may indeed be something that's larger than her. Through her life's journeys as portrayed in Naslund's novel, Una gains and loses relationships with humans over and over again, but she continues to have a relationship with that canopy of stars all her life. The subtitle of the book is, after all, The Stargazer. While a young girl living next to a lighthouse, Una gets closer to the sky by climbing the lighthouse tower. When she takes to the sea as a young teen, she learns to navigate using the stars. When she settles on the coast to wait for her seafaring husband to return home, she sleeps in the cupola at the peak of the house so she can be closer to the night sky. Late in the novel, she spends nights on the roof, gazing at the heavens and wondering at life, saying at one point, "When I emerged on the roof walk, the glittering road of the Milky Way stretched from one side of the night dome to the other. In such a swarm of light, I was not alone. Perhaps some other being on an unnamed planet looked out across that spangled void and imagined me." Una had what you might call a childlike fascination with the stars that lasted throughout her long life. The poem by Tagore, that is the lyric for hymn number 191, speaks of childlike qualities as well, in which the narrator is ready for the surprises of each new day, takes the time to notice the flowers bursting fresh within and without, hears life's song in the night music of the stars. Rabindranath Tagore was raised culturally Hindu. And so I know that some of the metaphors he uses in some of his writings wouldn't necessarily resonate with me, or I suspect you. I, however, was raised by nominally Christian parents using Christian texts and metaphors. And so some of Tagore's writings invite me to expand more deeply into my own tradition and metaphor. And since words are important, I'll share with you that Tagore's poem reminds me of some words of invitation that I was taught Jesus offered, perhaps, that when we become like children, we may enter the kingdom of heaven. I can't know what that means for you. But for me, it doesn't mean some orthodox heaven that's a material posthumous reward for good behavior and orthodox belief, but rather The heaven that is a state of mind that can happen to us when we open ourselves up to wonder and surprise and to that beauty that surrounds us on a daily basis. I find that heaven available if and when we can shift our focus and allow ourselves to hear the magnetic music of life's song. It's available if and when we allow ourselves to awaken to a new dawn and to a feeling of wealth and awe. It's available if and when we allow ourselves to know a mature and reflective joy and a life reborn in fresh surprise of love. Noticing, experiencing, reveling in these things might perhaps be the beginning of a faith in the marvelous that is right now in bloom all around us every day. So may it be. Let's sing this hymn together. If you would, it's at number 191, Now I Recall My Childhood. I invite you to rise up as you're willing and able. Now I recall my childhood when the sun burst on my bedside with the gay surprise, making the marvelous bloom the youthful star. Flowers too fresh within my heart, then looking on the world's simple joy, amidst birds and beasts and common weeds, the crescent clouds that fullest my mother's voice came to the stars. Now when I turn to think of wanting death, I find myself in star songs of the night, in cries of birds who stand morning light. Life reborn, fresh surprise of love. Our benediction comes from Surprise, Rabindranath Tagore. I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted, and behold, service was joy. Go in peace, walk softly on your paths, and may the light of love shine on you all your days.